Hi guys, Roger here. Doing a little different intro on this set of videos, and the reason I'm posting these is because I have built up a surplus of videos and getting behind on what I'm posting, so I wanted to do some bonus footage this week to try to catch up. Some of you may have noticed, but for those that haven't, the videos that I'm posting were filmed 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that gives me time to edit them and also try to stay ahead if I have a slow week where I'm not able to work on the car, or if something comes up, maybe I go on vacation for a week or something. I don't want there to be a week lapse in the videos. I'm trying to keep videos being posted every single week, and for that reason I have been withholding some footage and just trying to stay ahead on the filming versus the posting. And what I've noticed in the last few days is I've just got an accumulation of videos on my desktop that's growing larger and larger. And for that reason, this week we're going to have some bonus footage, and I'm going to post 2 sets of videos this week. I'll also do this in the future anytime I see the videos backing up. I like to keep you guys caught up as current with the progress of the car as possible, and that is what this will be. So I hope you're enjoying the build as much as I am, and enjoy the videos. Here's a couple of things I want to point out. Finished the mounts on the front suspension, and I'm working on the mounts for the rear suspension. I have got one side about halfway installed, and I'm laying this side up here, getting them ready. This one is in place and clamped and ready to drill. The bottom one's got to be fit. I had a little bit of interference here. I had to clear on the other side. I'll have to do the same here. Happy with the way those fit. Not so happy with the way the splice plates on the back side fit. This is the side that I have installed. And plates are mounted underneath. I've got the clearance holes, or the holes transferred all the way through to the back. This plate I'm happy with. It fits like it's supposed to. This plate, I changed the way I welded these because I couldn't get them to fit underneath just perfect. And I wasn't thinking that this overlapping this bar by as little as it does would be an issue, but it is. This plate is hitting the weld and the tube slightly, so I'm gonna have to come up with a different game plan here. Top hole is fine, of course. This bottom hole, I may have to come in here with a small hole saw and notch a clearance hole for the washer and the nut to fit in, and make a new doubler plate. Also, something that I wasn't thinking about in SolidWorks when I designed these parts, I just didn't see it in the flat, and it was my mistake. These two tubes are not on the same plane, and when I made these doubler plates on the back, I took for granted that they were. So this plate, I took and cut it into two smaller pieces and laid up here. I am okay with this doubler plate. It grabs enough material to sandwich and be strong enough. This one is not. I'm going to order some more metal, or I may have some scraps left. Either way, I'm going to cut a larger doubler plate here to grab more surface than just that little piece. Same here. This one did come up here and grab this tube. Now it doesn't, so I'm going to make a new one. It comes around and just captures more of this tube, more surface area to compress. So I'll have to make a couple of new doubler plates and do the clearance hole here. But I think I can work around this. Doesn't look like a big problem. It's just going to take some extra work. But I want to show you guys this, and I think I'm going to call it a day today. I'm tired. So I looked back on my CAD files today. I was trying to figure out why I thought these two pieces of metal were on the same plane, and I had one doubler plate spanning here. And the reason is because my files in SolidWorks are on the same plane. I had used a 2-inch thick piece of metal, and I had a 1.5 here and a 2 here, and it had a crazy angle cut on it to get those to splice together, and I didn't think I could get that to work correctly. So what I did was change to 1.5 by 3 on both of these tubes, which give me this offset. So it's not a problem. I'm going to have to create some new doubler plates. I've got one that'll cover this entire section here that'll work fine for this bolt, but I'll make a new one here and a new one to pick up these 2 bolts. And because I'm going to have to notch here to give that some clearance and cut into that tube just a tiny bit, and I added a hole here because the shock tower is going to mount on the back side over on this piece of steel under here, but I added a hole at the bottom to anchor that to keep it from trying to flex when the shocks were adding pressure to that plate. I think what I'm going to do here to make this as strong as possible is I'm going to cut a new plate and pick up all 5 of these holes. It may come down and only get half of this tube or so, but it's going to span all 5 of these holes just to tie them together and pull against as much of that tube as possible on this rear suspension. And I have all of these plates mounted, temporary. Got all the holes drilled, all the bolts in, all the splice plates that I'm going to use in place. Of course, I'm recutting a couple of these splice plates, but the front is finished. The back is at a point where I'm going to stop. I've got to order some more metal. I'm out of that 4130 1/8-inch plate I'm using for a doubler. I'll have to order some more. I need to order some other pieces of metal also, so I'll probably put an order in for that tonight. But I just want to tell you that's the what happened on the difference in the heights, or the different planes on those 2 pieces of tubing. And we'll get back to building. So I want to take a minute here and explain what I'm working on. I've got all of these 1/8" steel plates drilled and bolted to the car where they go. And now I'm getting ready to attach these little angle pieces that I made that were the suspension attached to. And there are small laser etched, not sure if you can see them, locator marks here that are pretty close to the exact location these go, but they won't be perfect because of the way I was having to take measurements from different things to put all this dimensions together. But what I'm working on here is getting the layout, putting the pieces together, getting the assemblies ready to weld. And the last thing I'm working on was this one here. This is one of the front pieces, the front lower. And I put some tape on here to mark where these are supposed to go, and taking a look at the differences and splitting the difference on those, because differences are kind of minor and I knew there would be some differences. Couldn't come up with a great way to hold all these pieces in place while I welded them. So I think what I'm going to do is I bought some JB Weld, and I think I'm going to put just a spot of JB Weld underneath each of these little angle pieces and then drop them down on these plates with a suspension attached and under weight and let them set all night. Then I'll take the suspension pieces loose. I'm hoping the JB Weld is strong enough to hold those two pieces together long enough to get some clamps on them, and then tack weld them in place so they can't move, and then of course final weld them into position permanently. But that's what I'm hoping to do, and I guess I'm going to proceed that route unless something pops up that looks like it won't work, or unless I get a failure somehow with the JB Weld not holding these pieces together long enough. But just laying these out and trying to get exact measurements before we weld them and glue them and then weld them into place. I just want to make sure they're as close as possible to being correct so we don't have any issues when we start aligning suspension. So a couple of quick updates. You probably saw me getting all these parts ready. I have glued them on with JB Weld. I'm hoping that the glue joints hold well enough that when I remove the suspension arms, these metal pieces will all stay together long enough for me to weld them into position. I wanted to use the suspension arms to make sure everything was in perfect alignment, and the glue hopefully will hold them together long enough for me to remove the arms and weld them into position where they're at. Also had a metal shipment come in today. Got some new metal plates to use as the new doubler plates, where I'm going to span all of these holes with one plate up here also. So that's what the thinner plates are for. And then I've got one thicker plate here that I'll use for engine mounts. This large tube is also for engine mounts. And this aluminum rod will be to make some spacers to go in the front of the car. Here where this upper control arm bolts in the center of this tube. I think it's going to get a pretty high stress load, so I'm going to make some spacers out of that aluminum rod. I'll drill a hole in the center, cut them the right height to where they drop down in this hole and just slide in. And when I clamp this bolt down, it'll push against those spacers and be solid all the way through this tube. So at least that's my thoughts. Should work, at least in theory. We'll see how it works out. And one other quick update. I picked up these wheels and tires locally. They were pretty cheap, and they won't be on the car permanently, but they will be, they're real close to the correct size, so they'll be something that I'll put on the car and I can use for fender clearance and just be able to roll it around. Once the suspension is on it, it's going to be too heavy for me to move by hand, but I can put these wheels and tires on it and roll it around easily. And I bought them cheap enough that I can sell them someday when I'm finished using them, get my money back.